Welcome to the REI Foundation Podcast, where we cover all the steps and strategies to make your real estate dreams a reality. Now your hosts, Jason and Peely.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Jason and Peely with the REI Foundation Podcast. Really excited to have Joe Fairless with us today. Joe Fairless is a full-time real estate investor and the host of the world's longest-running daily real estate podcast, Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. His career began in New York City. We both met in New York City, so we love the city ourselves. As the youngest vice president of an advertising agency to create a company that now controls over $135 million worth of real estate.
Wow. Hi, Joe Fairless. Welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. Looking forward to talking to you too and everyone who's listening.
Perfect. Well, Joe, we really appreciate you being on with us today.
Thank you.
Joe has been an integral part of our lives in many ways. We have been starting this podcast as a foundation, a platform for other people out there to find their basis and find their start to a path of really just financial freedom in whatever means apart. And Joe has helped me specifically and helped us get into multifamily and find a route to get into our first deal, which we're very excited to be closing in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you for you, Joe.
Yeah, and congrats on the upcoming closing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're about now, and then we'll pattern that about where you started in your path to real estate.
Sure. So now I do multifamily syndication, which probably a lot of your listeners know what that is, but in case anyone's not familiar, basically I partner with accredited investors. I put my money in a deal. They put their money in the same deal, and then we share in the profits. As you mentioned earlier, Peely, I have $135 million. It depends. That's based on purchase price. The value is probably more. It definitely should be more. But 135 based on purchase price $1 million of primarily apartment communities. The only thing that's in there that's not apartment communities, I have 3 single family homes, but so primarily it's apartment communities. And that's my area of focus. What we do is we buy value add apartment communities that are stabilized, but there are value add components to them, like doing renovations and increasing the rent, or doing a RUB program. So you bill back certain utilities to the residents, or building fences around the ground floor units to give some more privacy to the resident, and increasing rents there, lowering expenses through different green programs and all sorts of ways. So that's been the focus. And in addition, I've got the world's longest running daily real estate podcast. That is the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever. I've interviewed Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, a whole bunch of others, and I'm getting married in 2 months, so all sorts of stuff.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you.
Huge.
Nice,
huge. Well, I think one of the topics that would be key for especially people who haven't done their first deal is just to understand your mindset and really how you were able to frame your mind to be able to go from one, just getting into real estate investing as a single family home to start, and two, to make such a jump to even your first complex, to let alone 135 million worth of real estate.
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is my thought process. I'm not a materialistic person. I don't care about stuff. And my fiance now, she's on board with this. When we buy something, then we give away something. So we're constantly either it's a wash, or we give away more things than we actually buy. And that way we don't just acquire more and more stuff, because stuff doesn't mean much. And I've got $135 million worth of real estate with my business partner, and I drive a 2012 Toyota Corolla. Like, I just don't care about that stuff. And so I'll bring that back to the beginning, because that mentality has been applied through my whole investing and career. When I started, I moved from Texas to New York City. I was making $30,000 at an advertising agency on Madison Avenue right out of college. My check that I received was I think like $775 every 2 weeks after taxes were taken out. And my rent was $750. So I didn't have a lot of money to invest, let alone live. Because half of my monthly money went to pay rent.
It's like 3 meals in New York.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That sounds like New York.
Yeah.
And for anyone familiar with New York City, I was living in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, which isn't the safest place, or was not the safest place at the time. In fact, statistically speaking, they had the busiest police precinct in all of the 5 boroughs of New York City when I lived there in 2005. Wow. So I moved there for a year, and then I moved to the East Village in Manhattan, wonderful area, lived there for 9 years. But here's what I want to mention about it. I lived in the same apartment for 9 years while I was climbing the corporate ladder in advertising. So as I mentioned, I made $30,000 at the beginning. And then when I became the youngest vice president, my salary was $150,000, not including bonuses. All of my friends, every single one of my friends, they were upgrading their living situations. And while they were upgrading along the way, they were making fun of me for living like a college kid, even though I had been out of college for 8, 9, 10 years. And I had a roommate from Craigslist every single year. Sometimes they stayed multiple years, but every year I had a roommate from Craigslist. At the beginning, I had a roommate from college, but then he moved back to Texas. And so I just got roommates from Craigslist well into all of my 20s and my early 30s. I did not have a living room. There was a refrigerator, but it was a dorm style refrigerator. So it was a teeny tiny refrigerator. It was just 2 bedrooms, a hallway, a bathroom, and that's it. And a dorm style refrigerator. So I got made fun of along the way, but when I told my buddies, yeah, I'm also buying these homes, because at the time they were homes, they're like, oh, well, how'd you do that? And I tell them I'm saving my money. I'm not paying this rent. I'm not increasing my lifestyle, because the natural evolution or how people devolve, I think, when they go with their finances, once they start making more money, is they start increasing their fixed expenses and they buy nicer stuff. So in this case, in New York City, you start with a roommate or multiple roommates, then you have your apartment by yourself, and then you want a doorman building, and then you want some other stuff. And the whole time, like, I don't want any of that. I just want to be financially independent. And so I would tell them about that. They're like, oh, that's a great idea. But then they just kept increasing their lifestyles, and I was being made fun of. But at the same time, I was buying some homes in Texas. And so that's the mentality I've had all along. And I think that's important. That's something that gets overlooked a lot. And so I kept my fixed expenses the same. And I was able to make New York City money and invest in states where that money went a little bit farther, specifically Texas in 2009 when I bought my first house.
Wow. Yeah. So this might take you back way too far, but how did you start with this mentality? Because I mean, I wish I had that mentality when I lived in New York City, because I did exactly what your friends did. As soon as I started making more money, I got a better apartment. I didn't have anything to show for the work that I was actually doing, except just things.
A nicer place. Yeah.
A nicer place.
Well, you know what? I didn't even go to the level that I think I should have gone. And the level I think I should have gone is move out of Manhattan, move into Jersey, buy a duplex, and live in one side, rent out the other. So I didn't even do the most extreme scenario. Yeah. So I don't regret it, but it's certainly something that if presented the same opportunity again, I would have done that.
But how did you get that mentality in the beginning?
Maybe how you're born or raised.
Yeah, fortunately, since I was born in Michigan, but I spent most of my life in Texas. Fortunately, since I was from Texas, I didn't really care about a larger apartment because I knew I didn't eventually want a larger apartment. I've always had a longer view of things. Yeah. So if I were in Texas, after college, this might be a different interview because I might have bought a house that was a little bit larger with a backyard and gone to the traditional route. But because I didn't really care about a larger apartment because I want a backyard with a dog and trees and squirrels and stuff.
Exactly.
I didn't care about doorman buildings or anything else. So I was perfectly content and to have a smaller place. And it was also something that I was proud of. Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs, and one of them significance. And I did get some significance from being that guy who just was living like a college kid, but saving his money and buying investment stuff. And once I got that label, I owned it and I kind of liked it.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that really helps us parallel. I was going to say we could go on a whole episode about probably crazy roommates in New York City.
Oh yeah. I literally lived with a prostitute in New York City. And I did stand-up comedy, 2 shows. One of the places I did it at is closed down now. So that's how good I was. But I literally lived with a prostitute. I didn't know it at the time, but she was one.
I think you win.
Yeah,
you win. Well, yeah. But you did bring up Tony Robbins, the 6 human needs, and I mean a lot that of a common through line that we see when we're talking to people is just maybe their mindset, their habits, and just transitioning from their path of maybe okay habits or bad habits, but consistently building on good habits. What has really been a good step for you that you've created in your life, even starting with your day, just how to get your mind right for all the work you're doing, or how do you set up, just put your mind in the right place when you're starting your day?
Yeah, a couple things. One, as soon as I wake up, I have a liter of water with a scoop of wheatgrass. And it helps alkalize my body, get out some of the acid, just flush my body and hydrate me. And more info on that, people can read pH Miracle. It's a really good book, pH Miracle. In addition, I do a daily journal. I started this a year and a half ago. I freaking love it. Everyone should do it. It helps you see the progress that you've made. Especially if you have a hard time believing you're making progress. I guarantee you are. Just in the mindset that you have had and are having, as long as you're continually educating yourself with YouTube videos and Tony Robbins stuff and listening to podcasts like yours. So I do a daily journal, and all it is, it's really simple. It's a Word document that's password protected, a Word document. and I just put the date, today's date, and bullet points. Sometimes I do screenshots of certain things. Sometimes I do take pictures and I send them to my email, and then I put them into the Word document. And most of the time, it's just 2 or 3 bullet points of what happened that day. It could be things I accomplished, things I want to accomplish, things I'm thinking about, things that happened last night, whatever. It is so freaking cool and gratifying to see what you were doing 6 months ago, 1 year ago, and to read what you wrote at that time. That is something I highly recommend, doing a daily journal. Besides those 2 things, I'd say the last thing is I am doing something that nobody on the face of this planet has done, and that's the world's longest running daily real estate investing podcast.
Yep.
Nobody in the world has done a daily real estate investing podcast as long as I've done it. I don't even know anyone who's doing a daily real estate investing podcast, let alone as long as I've done it. Over 1,000 episodes, over 1,000 interviews. And, that's the type of mentality I have. When I'm in, I'm all in. Yep. And I just continue to do stuff that I know is effective for my business. And the podcast has been so beneficial for me personally, from a learning standpoint, but also from a business standpoint, making some really powerful relationships. And so those are the 3 habits. I'd say I alkalize my body, so I get some water and some wheatgrass. I journal every single day. I probably missed maybe 5-7 days in the last year and a half. That's it. And then I identify what is going to be effective in my business, and I just go all in. And that's an example would be the daily real estate podcast. I have over 1,000 episodes.
And the crazy thing about podcasts is each and every one of them are amazing.
And you give there's so much feedback. You have so many different patterns that you can go with each podcast. You cover just so much ground. So
it's real estate investment. First off, thank you for that compliment. I I'm not sure I agree that everyone's amazing, because I'm just really critical of my own interview skills. I do have amazing guests, yes, but I don't know about my interview skills. They've certainly evolved.
Well, every time I've listened to it, I've always taken something away. And that's sort of what you want to do with every single podcast. I've always taken something away, and I've always listened to it until the end. I mean, there's podcasts where I listen and I'll be like, oh, I have to go do something else. But yours is like, if I can't finish it, I go back because I know that there's something there that I can take away.
And that means a lot. And that's a focus of mine, because, I've interviewed now over 1,000 people, and I'm still learning. Like right before I was a couple minutes late to this call, because right before I was interviewing someone who has $100 million fund, and he's buying multifamily properties with the fund. And so I was all in on that interview. I wanted to learn more. And holy cow, if I didn't have a podcast, then first of all, I would have never come across this person. Secondly, I wouldn't have learned some things that I can then apply in my business and I can share out with others, like how to raise a fund. What are the pros and cons? The pros are you get to scale faster because you're buying more, and you can buy portfolios. The cons are you don't make as much money with a fund as an individual syndication. Yeah. So that's the type of stuff that it's just really valuable for me personally, but also to the listeners.
You ask, the consistent theme is, I think one of your questions at the end, of course, is what's your best real estate investing advice? You've had now, over 1,000 interviews. You must have a pattern of people who are finding success in their real estate business or whatever business you're speaking to them. Pretty much, it's mostly across the board real estate. What is a consistent pattern you see of people that ultimately find it success, whether it be, it doesn't have to be monetary, but, just having their time or having the life they want? What is something that you see as a pattern throughout with people?
I'd say I interviewed a developer who mentored under Ross Perot when Ross Perot was doing a lot of development stuff. And Ross's advice to him was be more focused on return of capital than return on capital. So make sure you get your money back first before you worry about what's the projected profit. And that if you're in real estate and you make sure you don't lose money, then I can guarantee that you're going to make money eventually. So first off, you're probably going to lose money in some transaction, by the way. Spoiler alert. Yeah. But if you do focus on the return of capital first before return on capital, then you're going to be setting yourself up for success. And here are some specific ways, because I've interviewed a lot of people who just got nailed in the 2008 Armageddon crash, and some ways that the reasons why they got nailed was that they didn't have enough operating capital to float through the bad times. They weren't cash flowing, and they needed to sell. So just flip that. Have enough operating capital to float the property or properties if something unexpected happens. Make sure that you are not over leveraged and you don't have to sell. And make sure that when you're investing in real estate, you're doing it intelligently, and you are cash flowing along the way. Buy properties that cash flow. The people who get in trouble are the fix and flippers who don't have, fix and flippers who don't have the property that they're flipping making income for them. And then the market shifts. The comps change in 3 weeks or a month for $50,000 shift down. And guess what? You got a property that isn't making money. Then you have to rent it out. You might have some hard money on it. And then a whole host of problems happen. The people and developers too, ground up developers. If you're taking dirt and making it into apartment communities or industrial or whatever, it's not cash flowing until you actually find tenant or tenants. Therefore, what I do is we buy stabilized cash flowing properties that make money day one. We simply enhance the value of them. There's risk in everything. There's risk in what I do, but we mitigate the risk versus a one-off fix and flip or something like that, a development where it's not cash flowing. You make more money you can make more money on the development side of things, but the risk is also there, and it's a little bit greater than what I'd want.
Yeah, much higher. Yeah, and of course you create that point where you're right. Everybody loses money at some point, but it becomes you figure out that you learn a lot, and the other part is you learn the questions that you maybe should have asked. And I find that a lot is with a lot of the points that I failed at, I've realized, well, I could have asked that, but I didn't know to ask that until I do know to ask this now the next time. And that's a big part of that. But cash flowing, stabilized properties, everything you said there, spot on. For sure.
Not as much money in it as development, but again, being focused on return of capital versus return on capital first.
So we also fix and flip properties.
I know.
Stop doing that, Keely and Jason.
Well, I think it's great to fix and flip if you've got enough cash flow to float should something unexpected happen, and if you're diversified. If you got money in the bank and you can easily if you could buy a freaking place cash if something happens, assuming that it's leveraged to when you acquire it, then fine. I think that's fine. So it's all about diversification of risk and mitigating it when you can.
Well, my question was, because we started as fix and flippers. What did you tell Jason to get him to see the light that is multifamily investing?
Well, I don't know. Ask Jason that question.
Well, I think I saw the pattern being that you're only going to be as good as it's constantly like searching for a check.
Yeah.
I'm constantly every week. Now we're going into the next part to find the next paycheck. And then at some point, it's just as if you got fired, you could assimilate that if you have a bad flip that goes wrong, which one or two or something's always going to go wrong in every point because you're pulling apart a house that's been put together, you're going to have some cut to that paycheck. Maybe at one point you're going to lose money where it could be as similar as you're fired. Where if you're buying a property that maybe has 50, 75, 100, 150 doors, well, you're not going to be hurting if quote unquote you have three units down units, and you got another two where people are moving somewhere else. Well, you still are able to float that across 75, 80 units. That you have so much more leverage, so much more economies of scale, and so many other patterns. But again, it comes down to buying right. If you buy that apartment complex or even the flip at the top of the market, and you don't leave yourself room to be able to grow into it, then you can have the same problems. But at least you can spread your problems and also create a lot more value within an apartment complex. Where flipping, it's a different pattern of buyer too. If you're a flipper, you're buying basically you're patterning it to a homeowner who may care more about what kind of kitchen you have. Where this property, it's an apartment complex, it's all about your net operating income and where you can create value that's going to increase the operations, which ultimately increases the worth of the property.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Yep. Yeah. Makes sense. And I'd say one other thing about that, fixing flipping is great for getting chunks of cash.
Correct.
And then it's investing. What do you do with that cash? That's the real key for all the fix and flippers who are listening. Are you then doubling down on more fix and flips? Are you staying at the roulette wheel? Yep. Or are you putting that money into something that's more long-term, like apartment community or storage units or single family homes as rentals?
Yep.
And some might say after they study what I do and what you two do for multifamily syndication, some might say, well, basically, if you're planning on exiting in 5 years, you're basically doing a flip, but it's more long-term. However, here's the key. That's not correct. The reason why is because we plan on doing a 1031 exchange to go into something larger after we sell at a profit. So we can continue to grow and grow. So I just interviewed a guy. He started with I want to say an 8 unit or 12 unit. I forget the exact number, but he bought it for $260,000 all in, and it appraised for $500 and something thousand about a year later because he added value, he bought it right. Wow. And then he bought a 26 unit. Then he did the same thing. Then he bought a 72 unit or 80 something unit, 100 something unit. And he just recently closed on a 250 unit for $7.9 million using the original capital that was invested in the first property plus the profits. He kept rolling them via 1031 exchange. And that's why I'm doing multifamily syndication, because this is a decades play for me. We do plan on exiting out of the property in about 5 years, but we're not taking our chips and doing it again. We're just rolling it into something larger and making money along the way.
And could you give like the, we'll say the Quick Notes version of 1031 exchange? So what are you doing now with this 1031 exchange?
Yeah, the 1031 exchange, basically it's a way to defer the capital gains taxes that you make on a transaction. So, if you have a property, you make money, you can either take that money out and get taxed on it like everyone else does when they make money on the stock market or on investing in a startup or something. Or flip it. Yeah. Or you can roll that into another property and via 1031 exchange, and you defer the taxes at a later date when you actually sell that property. But then you can do a 1031 in perpetuity. You can continue to do it until you die, until your kids die, until everyone dies. You can still do a 1031 and you can defer the taxes.
That's amazing.
Nice.
That's amazing. All right.
So
pattern.
I guess, where can people find you?
So anyone who wants to get a free resources guide for apartment investing, you can email. I've got an email for you. And the guide outlines a bunch of resources from websites that you can do market research on to broker websites to websites for trends in multifamily. Also has books that I recommend, podcasts, YouTube channels, things like that. Email info at joefairless.com. That's info at joefairless.com. And it's a free guide. We'll get you that guide.
Nice.
Perfect.
Also, and I've heard volume 2's coming out, but I do have volume 1 with me.
Nice. Yes. Well, you can go to Amazon right now and get you volume 2.
Nice.
It officially came out. Yeah.
So we are talking, for the people that are listening and not watching, we are talking the best real estate investing advice ever, volume 1, the book. You can actually get this on Amazon. And now there is a volume 2.
Yes.
It's important to note the proceeds go to
Junior Achievement of Cincinnati. So it helps underserved kids learn financial literacy skills.
Amazing.
All the profits go towards Junior Achievement of Cincinnati. And Barbara Corcoran personally endorsed volume 1. She said,
it's here.
What'd she say? What did Barbara Corcoran say?
This is a no-fluff real estate investing book that beginning and experienced investors can benefit from reading. Barbara Corcoran,
that's great.
Real estate mogul.
Yeah, so Shark Tank gal. And
right
then
there.
volume 2 for any bigger pockets people. Here's volume 2, by the way. It's got a fancy white line. So we changed it up a little bit.
All right.
Volume 2, Brandon Turner, who is
that's perfect.
one of the lead dogs on Bigger Pockets. He wrote, BAM, the advice in this book is like getting hit in the face with life-changing knowledge, free of fluff, and packed with incredible actual tips for growing your real estate business. So again, all profits go to Junior Achievement.
So get on Amazon, get these books. Yeah. One of the questions that I didn't ask him, and I think it'll be answered by this book, is how do you get started? Well, first you get one of these books, and then
you listen to your podcast.
Yeah,
and then you come listen to us.
Well, Joe, really appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us today.
Enjoyed it. Good catching up with you too. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. All right, Joe. Thank you so much. See you soon. If you're looking for another awesome real estate podcast to check out, be sure to check out the world's longest running daily real estate podcast, The Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever with Joe Fairless. Joe is a savvy investor and a great teacher and has a ton of awesome guests on there daily to provide you with every aspect of real estate investing advice ever. Again, it's The Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever with Joe Fairless.
Thanks for tuning into the REI Foundation podcast. Check back next time for more awesome tips and strategies to launch your new you in real estate.